Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of Ministravaganza.
Woo! Woo!
Today we're going to be starting off with From Earth to Asgard, our Marvel Crisis Protocol development and design panel. I'm Will Schick, head of product development for Atomic Mass Games. Josh Colon with the beautiful smile, our art director.
Hello.
You all know Dallas Kemp, our creative director. If you tune in to any of our streams, you got the smiles today.
Look at him.
So
I'm excited.
He's so happy.
I'm excited. He's excited.
And of course, Will Pagani, our development manager and
That's me.
lead developer on Marvel Crisis Protocol. Woo!
Woo!
All right, so we've got a lot of really exciting stuff to go through with you guys today. The first thing that we want to kick things off with is just a little discussion about some recently released products, specifically the affiliation packs.
Oh.
So these have been a pretty exciting development for us, and there's a lot of kind of impetus behind them and what the goals are to do, and of course there's going to be more coming. So we just wanted to take a moment to kind of talk a little bit about these. Originally, when Ministravaganza was going to be back in June, this would have been like preview information.
Look at this!
Look at this! These things are coming. This is very exciting. Of course, things got a little delayed, but we still wanted to give you all the context and kind of like the strategy and thoughts behind where we're going with these and the important role they'll play within the line. So obviously the first two, Black Order and Asgardians, are the affiliation packs. One of the big things behind this is, of course, Marvel Crisis Protocol is a game that continues to grow and expand. We keep adding new characters, new versions of original characters. And this becomes a question of just managing the line, both for players and for retailers themselves. So the affiliation packs give us that opportunity to go back and kind of consolidate things into very player-friendly and new starter-ish kind of products that allow players who purchase their core set and then want to immediately expand into a new affiliation, for example, the Asgardians or the Black Order, to go pick those up. It makes it much easier for retailers to be able to manage the line. It makes it much easier for players to be able to navigate the line. So you're going to see more of the original releases consolidated into these as time goes on. These are not going to immediately like turn around and show up right after something's released, though. So this is kind of like a long-term rollout. And of course, you see that these two are a lot of the things that were in the first 5 waves of products. But there will be more. There's no real significantly scheduled plan. They kind of come as they make sense within our product production cycle. But we do have 2 more coming this year. And those are going to be our favorite X-Mans, both the Uncanny X-Men affiliation pack and the Brotherhood of Mutants. I'll leave out the evil part, but that's what I always want to say, Josh.
That's a classic name.
It is. It is the classic
That's a classic
name.
full name.
But we don't judge anymore. We don't judge anymore.
No, we don't.
And of course, you will see others in the future as the line continues to progress and go on. But this is kind of the overall like the goals and role that the affiliation packs will play in the game. So they give veteran players a chance to go back and maybe pick up an affiliation that they didn't before, and they're a great starting point for new players who've just picked up a core set and have a favorite group of superheroes or supervillains in mind that they want to dive in and start adding to their core set as well. All right, with that, let's talk about some recently revealed big bad.
Very recently,
like yesterday recently revealed, and that is the one, the only Malekith.
There it is.
Yay.
You can hear the guitar riffs, right?
Mm-hmm. I could feel them.
It's right there. Right there. So, Malekith was one of those characters, one of those classic Thor villains we always knew that we wanted to bring to the game. He was definitely on the docket. The War of the Realms storyline, which came out as we were actually working on and developing a lot of Marvel Crisis Protocol at the time, really inspired a lot of what we were thinking about and our desire to get this famous villain character into the game. However, there's a pretty interesting story about how he went from Malekith to the Malekith you see before us. And Dallas Kemp, why don't you walk us through that fantastic journey?
So, like with all things, right? It's everything's a process, and there's an idea. It's like it starts out with a name on a sticky note, and then gets added to a name on a list on a computer spreadsheet, and then we gotta make a concept. And we went through. I think I drew probably 2 or 3 before I even showed anybody anything, and then I started showing everybody like, well, this is what I'm thinking. This is where we're going. And everybody's like, oh, that's pretty cool. But the president of publishing of Asmodee North America, Steve Horvath, loves Malekith.
He does. It's like his favorite character.
Like, just absolutely loves Malekith. And so I was like, we gotta show Steve, you know. Or Shook was even like, we gotta show Steve. So we show Steve, and Steve's like, I don't know, man. Like,
it's just an elf.
it just doesn't, like, it doesn't say the power and majesty that is Malekith and the character. And I'm like, all right, well, and I think we drew a couple more. And Steve was just like, I don't know. It's got to live up to Malekith.
And to be clear, this was pre-Bat Tiger. This was just Malekith.
this is
like he's got the black sword. You know.
I think there was one. He's got the sword like stuffed in the ground.
Yeah, he's got some like little magic coming out of his hands.
Magic powers, and then there was one like he's like pointing the sword, and like we pretty quickly got to the ruins of Asgard kind of motif for the base. And then we had a trip planned out to HQ, to Roseville, and I was just like, okay, set an hour aside. We're gonna lock ourselves in a room, me and Steve. And I took my notebook and we just closed ourselves in a room. He put away a little time in his schedule. He's a very busy man. Put away a little time in his busy schedule. We went in his office and I just started drawing as he talked. I'm like, tell me the story of Malekith. Paint the picture, Steve. I mean, he took to it. He's like, this is what I'm imagining. I'm like, oh yeah. And then the Bat Tiger, and he's like, the Bat Tiger, and he's like, it's got the wings and they're all spread. And he's like, and I'm like, it's standing on the ruins of Asgard. And he's like, make the ruins bigger. And there's fire, and there's a flag blowing in the wind. It's a huge flag. I'm like, it can't be that huge. Like, we need to
Less
pull
flag.
Bring it back.
Like,
Bring
bring
it
that back. Schick is already getting mad at me, and he doesn't even know why. Like, so,
I mean, full disclosure. I think before you went into that meeting, I was like, do not do the tiger.
do not do the
I
tiger.
was like,
yeah.
do not do.
We were
the
walking
tiger.
in the hallway, and Steve is skipping down the hallway, and Schick is just like, don't you do that tiger. And I'm like, I'm just going to do what the heart tells me. Like I do with all my life.
Yeah, the whole way.
Just
the whole way.
Bad tiger.
We were on such a time crunch at the time, and I was just like, you have to rein this in. Like, we do not have the time in the schedule for what's gonna come.
We did it.
And he walked out, and he's like, look, we got Malekith. I think I just shook my head and walked away. Like, it was, ultimately.
But it was worth it.
It was absolutely worth it. I think we gave Marco a couple of gray hairs,
Yeah.
and the engineers definitely did some crunch time. And then, then Josh, who was like, I'm ready to do this character art that's going to fit on this stat card, suddenly learned, oh, by the way, he's on a giant tiger with wings.
Fit that Bat Tiger in your little 1x3.
Yeah, because like the only time we didn't do a vehicle that and the art that is in the miniature is Ghost Rider.
Yeah, he doesn't have his bike.
And I just didn't like it. We're never gonna do that again. We're gonna try and fit the thing they come on.
Yeah, if they have a thing.
If they have a thing, we're gonna have a thing. And so that was tough. That was real tough. That was the most thumbnails we've ever done, like to date.
That went through. Yeah, there was like
a lot.
20 or more thumbnails of that.
And yeah, we got as much as we could. Graphic design did the best they could to fit it. But you'll see the full art in marketing and stuff, and it's worth it.
It's pretty close on the card.
It is
I
pretty
think
close.
you lose a little bit of like the
But
wingtips.
Yeah,
yeah.
there's not much clipping, is there?
Not that
much.
much, but you'll see the full wings and like banners.
It's
and
all
stuff.
there. We trust you. It's
Yeah.
all there. It's all there.
Oh man.
Yeah.
You didn't be like, well, this isn't gonna fit us. I'm just not gonna. Don't draw that part.
Yeah, no, it's there. It's all there.
And yes, and of course, like, so the sculpt's now way bigger, way more impressive, way more epic. So engineering, sculpting, like, we're working really hard at making that work and figuring it out. How's it all going to fit together? How big is this thing going to wind up being?
Is it?
How big is this thing going to be?
Bowling ball size.
Josh is trying to make art that encompasses this huge thing and fit it on the stat card. And then from the design and development side, I basically took the original Malekith card and just threw it in the trash. Because it doesn't fit at all now. I think he was like threat 4. He was pretty good. He was pretty good threat 4. And now I have to now it's just like, okay, well, if he's going to be this, if he's going to be War of the Realms like Malekith, he can't be.
He was walking around on a
Like
35 millimeter base. He's like,
Yeah, I was just like, threat 7. Why not? We'll just make him. We'll just make him a 7. The first 7 too. I think that released for the game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No spoilers
not
there.
Not the only 7, but it's the first 7. I know. Who knew that we would use numbers more times than once?
that's crazy.
It's crazy. And so then it just became this fun little thing of like, getting to reread War of the Realms, go through like all the stuff that he did, and come up with these rules that would encompass the idea that he was mounted. And I think then I showed it to Pagani, he was like, "You can't do this." He's like, "This
the standard.
This guy is like
The
straight
standard.
too much." But we worked through it, and we had some good times.
Yeah, I think we have a stat card to show.
We do.
So we can talk about that a little bit if you want.
You missed it from the article yesterday, but like the big things were, one discussion that we had was the Dark Council. Do we make it a new affiliation? Do we not? The determination there was really like when I looked at it, there's a lot of characters that do not exist currently in Marvel Crisis Protocol who do make up the Dark Council. We have some of them. To me, it just made more sense to allow players to use Cabal to kind of create their evil, sinister,
build their own Dark Council. Right?
And you can build something that is fairly true to the comics with the current roster that's available in Crisis Protocol. But you can stretch your wings and kind of go out.
Huh? Wings? Stretch?
Yeah, the wings. Stretch the wings. He's got a lot of wings. And the other benefit to that was just that it did bring a new option into Cabal that was very different from the two that currently exist, which were Sin and a core box Red Skull. And then Ferocity was kind of like that's what the tiger does. And Butcher,
This is what tigers do.
You should talk a little bit about Butchers of Thor, because that was one of the things you refused to let me do. Originally, it had bonuses against Thor's.
Yeah, I just say quickly, like when you were talking about like the realms were going back and forth, like when you nailed Butcher of Thor's, like that was the rule that like I think made everything click for you. Like we was like, he's gonna have Butcher of Thor's.
Yeah.
Not sure what it does, but it's gonna have
it's
it.
a great line, and it's a great line in the thing.
Yeah.
And then he butchers like 0 Thors.
Zero
but it's
Thors.
okay, 'cause that's what villains do,
question mark
right?
at the end
Look,
of that.
well,
right?
that's
Yeah.
intent, sir.
Yeah, it's the intent. It's the intent.
Yeah, I mean that attack had a lot of things. Originally, it had special rules for Thor Odinson. It moved into just as Guardians for different effects and stuff. And then we thought, this rule that is very specific to what Malekith is fighting against is pretty cool, but it's very niche, right? Like, and it created an imbalanced character where, like, when he was playing against Asgard, he was too good. And when he wasn't, he felt a little lackluster because his attacks weren't as cool. And we didn't want people to miss out on sort of that excitement of that. So we ended up cutting that rule from Butcher of Thor's to sort of smooth the curve, I guess. Like, make him a little more consistent of a character, which makes him a little easier to balance.
Yeah, I think we cut the Asgardian special rules. We gave the bonus dice back to the attack. We added the power to it, because I think it was strength 8, and then it went to strength 12 if he was fighting like an Asgardian. It was pretty nuts.
It did a bunch of different things for the
One of the-
Asgardians. We went through like 5
I feel like it had
options.
yeah.
One of the really solid changes that I think brought this guy, because the higher threats we always talk about, really hard to balance. And 7 was like in that unique spot where now it was even harder because it was like in between Dormammu and Hulks, or Magnetos and things like that. And one of the changes that you landed on through the testing process was turning Blood Boil, which was originally just a range 4 attack, into that beam 4.
Yeah, so when we were creating Dormammu originally, we had a lot of discussions about, like, what does an 8 threat character have to do to be worth 8 threat? And the answer is it has to do twice as much as a 4 threat because of that thing. But they still only get 2 actions, right? So you have to have, like, how can they affect multiple characters per turn? How can they do multiple things per turn? Because when you get into these huge threat values, you're losing efficiency by not taking more characters. So it's sort of like this exponential growth of when you go from 4 to 5 threat, you go up 25% or whatever, which is the point value. And then 5 to 6, maybe it has to be more than that percentage-wise.
It's not
right?
just 4 plus 4 is 8 on this, right?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
right? So, like, you need to be so much more than a normal 4-threat character to be an 8 or 7-threat character in this case, or 8-threat character in the case of Dormammu, right? So, like, you need that beam attack. What happens if you run into, like, a 7-wide list and Malekith just stabs one person a turn? That's not enough, right? You'll never make it. So you need ways to interact that are more
Meaningful, impactful.
relevant, impactful, meaningful than just, I have a 7-die attack with Pierce that just murders one person.
Yeah, murdering one person
that might not be enough.
means nothing, right?
Like it's just not enough. I have to do more than that every turn. And you see that in Malekith here, and we definitely applied the lessons that we learned with Dormammu to Malekith. You see also things like Ferocity. Thor has that exact same rule.
It's pretty close, yeah.
Well, no, Thor's is staggered.
Thor's is staggered.
Who has the throw version. But this version of this rule exists in other places, and it costs 3. But it only costs 2 on Malekith, and he makes 2 power a turn, so that you get that efficiency because you're 7th threat, right? And
Do it right away.
that makes it okay on a 4th threat character to cost 3, and a 7th threat character only gets it for 2, for example, because you need that efficiency built in, or you just can't function on the table.
2 4s can control 2 points.
Exactly.
2 4s can make 4 attacks. 2 4s can.
Yep. So 7th threat, 6th threat, 8th threat. These characters need to be much more powerful than a 4th threat or 5th threat character to be really relevant on the table at all.
Right.
And I know another big one that we talked about a lot was Cloak of Shadows. Was like, what is this going to do? We had things like it was a placement for a little while, gave him extra movement, so he could like really just kind of go everywhere on the table. We're going to get more to that in a moment. And we ended up with, I mean, I'll spoil it a tiny bit here, so don't jump yet, Tony. Don't jump yet.
Yeah.
But the Black Bifrost is a card that's coming up here in a moment that gives him mobility, and we decided that Cloak of Shadows, we didn't want that mobility on the card because it was too strong. He was able to really just go anywhere he wanted on the table when it was on his card, but a Tactics card you can only use once. So it really let us give him a very powerful effect on a Tactic card and not be able to use it every turn, which was a really interesting thing that we hadn't particularly delved into on these really expensive characters before. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think even before it was Cloak of Shadows, the teleport effect was Black Bifrost, and then we moved that to the Tactic card because the Black Bifrost, if you've read War of the Realms, if you haven't, spoiler alert, it's a huge deal.
There's
the
a Black Bifrost.
Yeah, there's a Black Bifrost. It really allows Malekith to do all of his sinister schemes. It's very important. So let's go ahead and take a look at Black Bifrost. Josh, you want to talk about the art for this? It's a little hidden behind the card, but paint a picture with your words for once.
Word pictures, Josh.
It's the most heavy metal tactic card we've done so far. If you have any questions about what a Black Bifrost does and what it looks like, you'll see it in the art. It has Malekith on the back tiger coming out of the Black Bifrost with a whole army.
What's that blue thing?
That is a frost giant.
And then what's that little green thing floating up above?
That would be Enchantress.
Nice.
Isn't there a troll in there too?
There is a troll character from the comic books. That's all I will say. And
would he be a king of trolls?
He might be a king of trolls character.
Allegedly.
And it was done by Ivo Campillo da Silva, a new artist that we'll see a lot of in the future. And it was just. It's a big card. It's like the art is massive. Like it's like 600 DPI, which doesn't mean anything. But like you could make a full banner. You could make a full like convention
perhaps
banner.
we will.
And perhaps we will.
Perhaps we will.
Yeah.
A whole concert
So,
backing.
the players will recognize this card. It is very similar to Pentagrams of Farala from Doctor Strange here. We use that sort of as a concept to learn about how to make cards like this. You'll notice this one costs more power, costs 3 power, so Malekith cannot play it at turn 1 without some shenanigans going on anyway. Because that was an issue that came up with that card. So we were learning from our previous designs as we're making these things. And also you suffer damage for using the Black Bifrost in this one because that felt very metal. And it also felt very Malekith, right? He's not so much about like doing things safely. He's a little more aggressive, a little more crazy, I guess. I don't know.
I'm totally
however you
taking
wanna
a
do it.
Malekith Dormammu list.
Yeah, absolutely. 15 points.
15. Throw
Dark
in a random
Dimension
2
Malekith.
and you're good to go.
I
Wrap
want to
it
see
up.
like little flames sculpted on the the dragon wings.
Yeah.
On the tiger.
Like a Dark Dimension tiger, so he's all black with
That
a
would be-
flamey mane.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah.
Some
That would be so
turquoise
cool.
tiger stripes on that black.
So this is just one of Malekith's tactic cards. There are more, which I do not believe we will be showing.
No.
But there are more coming. They're exciting. They're super cool.
Yeah, and of course, one of the big things about him being a Cabal leadership is that he gets to access to all the other Cabal cards.
Yeah, you get Dark Reign, right?
which is huge, especially for Malekith himself, since he doesn't have innate rerolls, which is kind of one of his checks. He
Yeah.
he doesn't have the rerolls that can make him more consistent.
Cloak of Shadows does give him some bonuses on his dice, but
little
it's
bit.
not the same consistency as like full rerolls or rerolling a bunch of dice
Yeah.
or even limited rerolls.
I mean, you have
So.
for that to really like work. It's kind of there's more random chance here, right? You have to roll a bunch of fails, and then you have to also have a bunch of power to turn those fails. And if you roll all successes, then that power is meaningless.
Yeah,
So that was like one of the like balancing factors y'all took into consideration, like the no rerolls. He doesn't have like a defense tech at all.
Well, you can look at shadows on defense as well, but yes, yeah, he's not going to be super durable. He doesn't have a ton of things to help him survive like Magneto does or some of these other characters, and then he also doesn't really have a consistency thing built into him. What's kind of strange about the math of adding failures as successes is it can't really take a good roll and make it great, right? Because you are still, like, you rolled a bunch of failures, so you don't already have a bunch of successes, right? So but you do get to add dice for the criticals, so you can like try and dice it right, but like it's not consistent.
Right.
It is basically what it is, and it's not gonna like. I'm not gonna get into too much math here, but yes, it's not as good as like re-rolling dice in mass.
But that does kind of come back to the discussion of like looking at all of the different facets of character and saying this character is really good at these 4 things, these 2 things, these 3 things, depending on their point cost, and then the counter to that is that they're not good at these other things. So, you have characters like Malekith who, when they roll a lot of dice, but the dice are very inconsistent. When they go off, they go off.
Absolutely.
And when they have a bad roll, it doesn't, it's not, it happens.
Right.
And then they have things to make up for that. Like, Malekith has a very healthy stamina pool, but he doesn't have ways to mitigate damage as much.
So like if a bunch of heroes got together
and like started beating up on him, they
teamed
might,
up on
they
him,
might, he'll take out a few of them, but thematically they might take him down. Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
But it sounds like the idea is that like what the character is not good at is just as important to its
Absolutely.
core identity
Absolutely.
as what he is good at.
It's not a character that's interesting if they just do everything.
Yeah,
Right.
That's a boring character.
You have to make play, like there's the player identification. Some players want consistency, so they will gravitate towards characters that are very good at manipulating their dice probabilities.
Right.
Some players like, the spike. I like Pagani likes consistency. I like characters that have huge spikes,
Big moments.
but also maybe big lows,
Like,
right?
like Rocket.
Yeah.
Like, like your Wolverines, like your Malekiths, like Rocket. Yeah, to me that's exciting and fun. And then I build my strategy around mitigating the lows and capitalizing on the highs.
Right.
Whereas somebody who values
Wolverine
consistency
loses sometimes.
Sometimes, and then he always gets back up.
He gets back up.
And then other players like that median line where it's like I'm not going to really have the spike as high, but I'm not going to have the low. It's going to be kind of like more in the middle.
Right. I want to roll 4s and 12s, not always 8s.
And then combining those different things, it's very interesting, right? And that's part of what makes a game exciting and fun. And then really lends itself to like, some people love this character, some people love that character. Neither side is wrong. They're just choosing the character that fits their playstyle, fits their desires and their wants.
And that narrative, that storytelling aspect that plays out in front of us in Marvel Crisis Protocol.
All right, let's dive in and talk about the next big release. So Malekith, obviously, physically big. In the future,
I don't know what it is.
Next thing that's
It's
coming
not
out.
that big.
It's pretty big.
Everyone's begging to see that. It's
pretty big. The
Malekith?
Malekith?
If
Bring it tonight.
If Summer's listening, there's one painted on my shelf.
Is Summer listening though?
I don't know.
We'll
but
find
there's
out
one painted
in
on my
3 to
shelf.
5 minutes.
If Summer grabs it and brings it, we can put it in.
Bring it over. We'll show it.
It's not the studio one, but there's one painted that we can put on screen.
So
What's next?
the next big thing we did show
you
the
know?
trailer during
No.
Very
I have no idea.
Josh, we need art.
Oh God! Oh God!
What happened?
Oh God!
No. So this was revealed during the kind of the pseudo Ministravaganza week when it got delayed, which is the next big wave is going to be Shield versus Hydra. So we're going to see some Shield reinforcements, and it is the entrance of Hydra into the game officially.
Yeah!
As a separate affiliation.
As its own unique affiliation. Cabal. When the game came out, a lot of people asked, Cabal looks a lot like Hydra. Why isn't it Hydra? And the reason is because we knew that we needed kind of the counterbalance to the Avengers, which was always going to include the vast majority of heroic characters. And Cabal gave us that opportunity to take characters like Ultron.
But we also had 12 miniatures.
That's true.
It's
And
true.
it's like
MODOK.
if you release 5 affiliations, you don't have enough to play in affiliation, so you need that. We're growing here.
Yeah.
We're
And
cultivating
even,
a
and
garden.
again, even looking long term, right? Like we knew that there were going to be things that would come in. Is there a summer behind the curtain?
No, I'm just pointing at the plant.
Oh, just
the
pointing at
plant. We're cultivating our
Got
garden.
it. Cultivating, yeah. So Cabal made sense because it gave us the most flexibility and the most room to grow. We're now at a point now, though, where like an actual true Hydra affiliation made perfect sense, and it was time to kind of introduce that in the game. So the first character we're going to talk about here is Baron Strucker.
Look at his
Look at him. So obviously super classic from the comics. Josh and Dallas kind of walk us through all of the design stuff that happened with him in terms of his sculpt, his art, everything that make him
You want to go first?
happen
You go
on the
first because
table.
we have the menu.
Okay, so the opposite of Malekith. This guy
I
was
think
kind
you stole a Malekith pose for this
I think
guy.
this was
actually.
literally just a Malekith pose,
Yeah.
and we just twisted the arms, and it's just like this just works,
Yeah.
right? It just works for Strucker. He's
The
got
scheming madman.
the fist up, it's on fire. His chest is all
Yeah.
thrown out. He's very powerful and confident. It's just like, well, that's a good Strucker pose, and we don't want everything to be a Malekith, right? You need that.
It's more subtle.
Yeah, it's just like with rules, right? You need that bell curve, and you want the ends to be tight. With miniatures, we kind of want the same thing. We want that bell curve. We want those Luke Cages and those Baron Struckers, and we want to go up to, I don't know, Magnetos, and then way over here on this end, you got
You got your Bat Tigers.
Bat Tigers.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and other things coming, but that bell curve. So it was just, he was a nice breathing point for the
And
wave.
I mean, we talk a lot about this when we're initially looking at characters and stuff. It's like, what fits the character? You
Yeah.
know, if Strucker gets his hands dirty, but that's the last resort for
So,
him.
yeah, it's the end of the line.
He's in the high throne chair. He's standing behind like all of the troops commanding. So it's like the quieter pose for him just feels right. If he was like leaping through the air doing a Superman
He doesn't
punch,
fly,
it wouldn't be Strucker.
right?
Right.
He doesn't, you know, like he's not Batroc the Leaper. He's not jumping in there and doing like kicks.
They kick.
Like, so it just feels better to have him standing there being powerful and you know, majestic.
I don't think I would describe him as majestic, but
It's majestic. Look at him.
I think it's pretty majestic.
Bald.
All right, let's jump over real quick to
Bald.
both the stat card and the art. But Josh, kind of walk us through the art process here
Look
real
at
quick.
him.
Well, sometimes like we try to have the art pose not always ape the miniature because that's so easy because they do such a great
should
job.
never.
I mean, they're so good. Like the miniatures are so good.
Artists do different things with characters. They should never match.
But sometimes
Comics is comics.
I
Let them
know.
breathe and live.
I know, but sometimes the poses just the poses are just so good, and they just fit the character so well. So I mean, this is almost a 1-for-1 of the miniature, because it just really made sense. He's got his Mystic Gauntlet, and this was by a new artist, Dominic Glover, who did the whole set. And we'll be talking more about the approach to the art as we move on to different characters.
I
But
forgot he had the real arrogance.
yeah, I mean, is that
Oh
royal?
yeah. We're gonna talk about arrogance because it's probably one of my favorite rules, because I think it fits the character so well. And every time the feedback came back and it was like, this is not really a great rule, I was like, it doesn't matter because it totally plays into the character.
I love that he has healing factor because he's always like dying and coming back. And,
Well, yeah,
like,
I mean,
healing.
if,
I love it.
You know, he's got
I
the
love it so much.
virus in him, right, which is
Yeah.
giving him longevity and all that. But yeah, the real big thing for me on this guy was obviously figuring out the leadership, and it was fun to really play with the idea of special conditions and how, you know, in the comics he's infected with the virus, and that often plays into like what he's trying to do with everything. But finding a way to make special condition handing out interesting and different, and make it more prevalent. You know, because we have things like Crew of the Milano, which is
Right.
really anti-special condition, and making sure that there are teams and roster builds that can do that makes that card more interesting. It makes counterplay and things more interesting as well. It's a huge chunk of text, but I think it really defines a unique role and a unique team composition that Strucker wants, and will pair really well with their other leadership, which we'll probably see a little bit later on. Arrogance for me was like one of those ones where I love the idea of the fact that, like, because if you read Strucker at all, he always thinks that he's got it figured out.
Yeah.
And the idea that you're just like, I'm going to spend one and all of my failures will count, because attacks typically roll more dice than defense. So you should be kind of arrogant that you'll probably win out on this. But there are times where it goes horribly awry, and that's such a villain thing. Like, it's perfectly in line with villains. So again,
thwarted again.
Thwarted again.
This is, the moments in playtest where it'd be like, he's fighting Captain America, and he's like, I'm going to arrogance. And then Cap is just like, okay. And then Cap rolls all fails, and he rolls like a pretty low roll, and the Cap's just like, yeah, I guess you were wrong. You can just see that in the comics, right? He's just like, you shouldn't have come here, Steve. And Steve's like, I can do this all day. Bat, bat, bat. And great. Like, those are the moments to me that really just sing. And then, of course, when it works and your arrogance pays off and you just lay out a fool,
It's a blowout.
Finally.
it's great. Yeah. And it works very well with The World Is Mine, right? Like, so you kind of want to use it in combination with the Spender. It's very cheap, so you can kind of pull it together. But it's fun and very different. What do you got?
Yeah, well, I mean, the sort of the through-line theme for Hydra is special conditions, right? This leadership deals with them. There's going to be a lot of characters that give them out, coming out. Madam Viper, right? She gives them out. Madam Hydra, I guess, who is Viper, gives them out a bunch. So
Yep. And
it was a very unique space to work in for the game because we have a lot of characters, obviously, that give out special conditions, right? But not a lot of things that interact directly with special conditions because the special condition just does what it does. But now you've got these things that you get benefits for giving them out. You get benefits for having them, if I remember correctly, on Zola here. So it's going to get a little spicy.
Oh, yeah. We're not going to show the next character's stat card, but we will talk a little bit. And Strucker's leadership absolutely impacted a lot of the final design for Zola because Zola became kind of this condition handing out like monster. But not to the opponents, to your team.
Yeah, so like it's
He's kind of the battery that he's kind of he's this interesting battery that really powers Strucker's leadership to the next level. Because you can consistently use it when Zola's around, like, just prodding people. He's just like try this.
This might work.
Yeah, you got a lot of different ways to play with, like, the special conditions sort of become a different resource to manage instead of just power. And I always love doing that with things, giving you different ways to play with things inside of the game.
And from a sculpting perspective, Zola's also kind of exciting because a lot of people, I think, have asked since they saw him in the video, what about the window? What about the face? Dallas, do you want to?
Yeah. I mean, immediately once we put Zola on and started concepting it, it was immediately like, the question is, he's got a TV screen. What does that mean? Is it just a face? Is it blank? Do we make people freehand-it? There's so many ways to get to that endpoint and create successful hobby. So we came up with this way. He's actually got two faces. And you put it in there, and the whole torso is clear. So, spoiler alert, tomorrow I'm going to do a whole stream on how to work around that and how to
handle clear
the
plastic
and get the effect you want.
Mask it off properly, that kind of stuff, right?
So, I have some ideas now for, like, alternate versions, like putting blanks back there, like just blank clean, and, like, doing, like, kind of like Matrix falling text or like Pong or something.
Oh yeah,
like,
just like with some little space invaders.
Space invaders or something happening inside there. Like just and of course also this lends itself very well to LEDs. If you're one of those miniature hobbyists, throwing LEDs in this thing,
it's glowing.
It's gonna look so cool.
Amazing.
And he's big and chunky. He's got plenty of space. He's got something to stand on to hide batteries. This guy's begging for LEDs.
He's really big too. Like I'm surprised.
Oh, he's big.
He's chunky, and I mean I know this is another one of those things where when we're looking and discussing a character, we kind of look at the presence of the miniature, and then we look at a lot of the media. And so if you go back to kind of the classic era, Zola, he was like 5'5". I mean, he was tiny. He was super small.
The first one came out.
I know. I think I flicked it off the table.
And Chick literally walks over and is like, "What is this? Bap! Is this Wolverine?
It
Bap!"
was just too small.
And I'm like, I know you said big, but like I'm looking at all the references, and then it was a cartoon.
Yeah, it was. So he's been in a couple of different animated series. He was in Earth's Mightiest Heroes.
Yeah.
And then the one that I really loved was Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And in each of those, like they made him really big, like a big screen tube TV.
This is what we need. And I'm like, I'm in. I mean, you don't have to tell me to make it bigger twice.
Yeah.
So we just kept bumping him up, and I think he bumped up like 3 or 4 times, like
Yeah.
through our R&D process.
We kind of just kept playing with it to like make sure that he felt impressive and that he had that mad scientist presence. You know, because when you're in a comic and people are just drawing the panels, the perspective is less
It's
important.
crazy.
It doesn't matter as much, so you can make him look intimidating next to a 6'2" Steve. But when they're all miniatures on the table, and suddenly Steve towers over Zola, you're like, this is not a villain. It goes back to that classic like storytelling trope, which we discussed. Like, heroes need bigger things to overcome.
Yep.
Because it's not exciting when the hero is the big person,
Yep.
right? And so from just that perspective, it made visually it made the most sense to have Zola be big and to take those inspirations from the other media.
Even that boy from Brooklyn
like,
is
just-
the underdog.
That's right. Just pump him up. Steve never goes into a fight the top dog. He grits his way through.
Grits his way through.
And you had some fun. I mean, why don't you talk a little bit about the art process, because we're going to get to kind of the next one. With like the overall theme, because when we went into this wave and we were talking about classics, combining the Silver Age and kind of the Golden Age ideas together to create this homage, you had some pretty strong ideas. Some of them were crazy, and some of them were.
We all have crazy ideas.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was just fun to be able to do like thematically do a bad guy set for the most part for all the team tactic cards, So there's a big like mad scientist theme running through and world domination theme that I think even made it a little bit into the gameplay. Like literally,
Absolutely.
I was like, I want to make a art of them literally trying to take over the world, and then Pagani said, okay, we'll make a rule. Like give them a rule that like basically does that. Yeah. But one of the things about Hydra is that they combine science with magic, characters like Zola sort of focus more on the technological side, and then you've got other characters
Say his name.
like Red Skull
Tony.
Ba-ba. Look at
that go further from another direction, and we ended up with the coolest new version of Red Skull ever. I don't want to bury the lead, but you're like, I'm not gonna bury the lead. They're like, where's the cosmic cube? What do you think is powering his armor?
This is really exciting, and Dallas can kind of dive into it before we start looking at the stat card and stuff and talking about gameplay rules. But we once again had the opportunity to create something that's uniquely Marvel Crisis Protocol with this Red Skull, and we took inspiration from a lot of different places, and we talked a lot about, okay, what do we want this Red Skull to kind of like feel like, and we really leaned into that weird sci-fi, classic Silver Age, Golden Age tech angle.
Yeah, it kind of looks like old Iron Man to me a little
little
bit.
bit, a little
Like,
bit.
a little chunky.
It's so like when we first started talking about that, right? It was like what's piece of armor? It's being powered, and so like the story started unfolding, and like it's like, well, what if this is like some like 12th century bronze armor that's slowly passed down through this organization, through the leaders. And like yesterday I did a paint stream and I was talking about this a little bit, where it's like, it was like, there's probably people in the organizations like, sir, what have you done? You've tainted your father's armor. And he's like, I've done what is necessary. Right?
Yeah.
He's combining that science and that magic and this ancient piece of armor, and he's adapted it to his uses, because that's what Red Skull would do, right? It doesn't matter that it's ancient and revered.
Right.
And then
He
of course
needs it to insta me.
we draw this whole thing. We get an amazing concept artist to do the whole design, because we need all of it like listed out.
Yeah, we did like 3 thumbnail sketches, sent them to Nate Fame, the concept artist, and like he made just this awesome
turnaround.
Yeah, just
Turn around.
everything.
Yep.
And then Dallas draws this pose, and we're like, okay, well, there's got to be a lot of lightning. 'Cause
Lightning.
That's like the weird
Yeah,
sci-fi
the mad
like war tech.
scientist. Yeah.
And so Dallas gets done drawing it all in this concept, and they're just little squiggles, and then he shows it to Marco, and I think Marco just kind of like dropped his head and was like, you gotta be kidding me. And then
he showed it to Jesse, and Jesse's like, we can't photograph this.
but
We have to.
one of the amazing things is you showed it to Marco, and you're like, can we do this? And he was like, I don't know. And he went away for like 24 hours, and he came back, and he had half the thing
He
sculpted.
sculpted it.
He did.
Like sculpted
It was
half
just
of
done.
it in a day. He's
I
just like,
remember
yeah, and then this, and then you push that out, and
Yep.
then I was like, well, that needs to be recessed. And he's like, oh yeah, that's right. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
all right,
he did a
cool.
proof of concept just to prove that the lightning effects and the way that we wanted the rocks to be and everything would like work and come together. It's not the first time that that's happened, but it was definitely like one of the fastest. Because
Yeah.
I think I came back the next day and Dallas was like, I got something to show you. And I was like, this looks done.
Look at this.
I
Oh,
guess
whoa,
we're
whoa,
moving on to the
sir,
next
it's not
thing.
done.
Not done. Not even close.
All
Okay.
these lessons, right? Like that lightning. Like we're always learning lessons. Like we're growing and learning and adapting and taking those lessons and applying them in new and interesting ways to make better and better miniatures.
Right.
And this is part of that evolution.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and jump to the
Like
card.
rules.
Like
Yeah,
rules.
we're
Let's
not
talk
done
about
learning.
rules.
We're
Yeah,
never
this is
done
nuts.
Yeah, look at him.
Look at him. Yeah.
So Josh obviously had to take the concept art and then figure out all the colors.
Yeah, that was that. We have to do a. It was I think one of the first or second times I ever had to do a color design thing because most of the times the colors were just referenced from the comics or whatever. But because this was AMG invented, Dallas and I sat down, and Dallas was great because he already had a lot of ideas of what he wanted to be bronze and silver and whatever. Obviously, like things like keep the skull red, like you know,
Pretty
you
easy,
kinda-
right?
That's a pretty bold choice, Josh.
And then, but we were working on this sort of in conjunction with the miniature sculpt.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how big, like how boisterous the miniature was going to be. So I was conservative with the pose. I had the artist be very conservative with the pose because I didn't know.
Yeah, because this is one of the ones that you actually.
I had to do it before because
You were
we
doing
had to
it
get Marvel
before,
approvals. We had
yeah.
to get Marvel approvals for the colors, the extra colors and stuff. But we're really happy with it. We're really, really happy with it. And I think he's scary for the art and scary for the rules.
Yeah, the rules were really fun to work on and kind of iterated over. He actually started at Threat 4. A lot of the stuff that's on his card was there. We knew that we wanted him to obviously bring in Hydra troopers. That was going to be a big thing, right? He needed to command them and bring them on. And grunts are always interesting because we have just like transforming characters. It's fun to play with that mechanic. Like how does he get them on the field? What do they do for him? How do they like compound together to make this creative character? Leviathan armor to me was the big one because we knew the armor was a central focus, and that was the thing that I really wanted to kind of dial in. So we went back a little bit to the vision design and how his phasing worked, and we kind of changed it around to make it make sense for Red Skull and what he would want. So you'll see a little bit of vision in terms of how his stats work, how Leviathan armor works. He doesn't have as much control over it as
he can't
Vision
swap
does.
it.
He can't swap in between.
Mid-round.
And then World Domination just made perfect sense for his leadership because that's what he's always trying to do. So that was really easy to kind of come up with. And then I really loved Blitz Strike, and that caused all kinds of problems because I refused to allow it to change. So now it got reined in, and he went up
Sure.
to Threat 5. But
Sure.
Pagani can talk a little bit about how that
Yeah,
process
I mean,
went.
Blitz Strike is really interesting because it has a lot of different things you can do with it, right? Like you've got the blitz, you've got the push, so do you want to move forward? Do you want them to move? How do you want to do that kind of thing? So it's a very versatile attack that can do a lot of things. It doesn't cost power, which is great. I love Kneel Before Me because it's this big honkin' 9-dice attack, costs 5 power, and then to me it's that like scene in the comics where like, yeah, somebody's kneeling before him and he's like, ha ha, you kneeled, peasant. Like
Sends him
and
flying.
it's great. And then Josh talked a little bit earlier about world domination as a theme.
Right
It's
there.
there.
It's in the title.
What does it do? It gives you more stuff for doing the things you already want to do,
Yep.
which is just always the sign of a great leadership. And then Blitz Strike with empowered gauntlets, right? Like if you want to pay that power in, you can get a whole bunch of bonus out of that. So like Blitz Strike is just super powerful, but if you're getting a bunch of damage through your empowered gauntlets, you may not be getting your triggers. So it's back into that like there's kind of 3 like modes that can really happen with Blitz Strike.
Right.
And you don't necessarily know what you're going to get till you roll it, which I always like that sort of uncertainty with Red Skull, right? Where you
Right.
never really like he's that arrogant power. He's like, of course I can control this, or of course I can do the thing that I want to do. I'm not going to plan for that, and then maybe it goes wrong. Maybe you don't get your
I've
push or
studied a lot
whatever.
of books about this artifact. I know how it works. Sir, don't push that button. It wasn't in the book.
Yeah, right. Like, so I think that's great.
What I love
as like a theme for Red Skull.
What I love about him is he's got that 4 physical armor and that bunch of health, right? But you still have the low energy and mystic defense because it kind of represents the idea that like he's dealing with unstable energies, you know, like is that moment in the comics are like target the generator, you know,
Yeah.
and that's the way to stop him. So he's not like we talked about earlier, like
The
everyone
cube is the source of his
power.
power.
Yeah, then sure, yeah. They did that. The weaknesses are just as important on the character
Absolutely.
design as the strengths.
And then all-consuming obsession.
That was
That's-
a Pagani special.
Yeah, that's kind of a throwback into the Cosmic Cube, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I damage myself, I gain power. There's some
there-
crazy tactic cards for this guy. Are we talking about any of those?
We are showing, yes?
Yes, I think we're
Yes?
showing one.
Go to the tactic cards.
I don't know if we're going to the...
We're showing occult research.
Yeah, but...
That's the crazy
yeah, that's
one.
him. Yep. I always get that one confused with the Zola one, the name.
But
So
that's on purpose.
Let's show occult research here.
Well, no, first it's going to be the High Council and Scientific Method.
Oh,
Then
scientific
we'll-
method is
yeah.
the Zola one. Okay.
Yeah, that's the-
Fine.
So
We'll
here-
wait.
Look
Here's-
at that Zola art.
So you kind of set this up before, but the High Council, which is the one with all of the Hydra bad guys sitting around and picking out their sections of the Hydra world. That card's another one that I think Pagani just wrote a novel on the back. He's like, what if it did this?
There's some long tactic cards
Yeah,
in these boxes.
but
So.
one of the ones that's super fun puzzle to kind of like some puzzle mini games, difficult to please if you've ever played with that tactic card or you watched the stream where I tried to pull it off, which requires you to do modest 3 things in one round.
Without anyone getting dazed, if I remember correctly.
Modest.
Yeah, a modest 3 things. High Council requires you to do 5 things
Yeah.
in one round, and if you do,
You get some stuff.
you get a lot of stuff.
You get
some
You
stuff.
get some things. It's like getting a pinata, candy.
Hey.
Hey.
And then the 2-card Scientific Method and the next one we're going to show actually have, once you play them, they're in effect for the whole game.
Yes.
And so this kind of shows like Hydra's meddling with like nature and magic, and if you can pull these things off, you kind of gain long-term benefits. But I know Josh was particularly proud of how happy Zola is.
Yeah, so
He has teeth.
that card, the Scientific Method, is one of my favorites. It's done by Rodrigo Lorenzo, and it's supposed to mirror. So this one and Occult Research that we'll show in a little bit are actually mirrored. So like if you put them next to each other, they're actually like
Nice.
2 mirrors of like the same scene. One showing like scientific stuff, one showing occult, and I just really like look how he's having a good day. Zola's just
I
having a
mean, it
really good
worked,
day.
right?
Yeah, it works. It works.
It lives.
The problem is the next panel is when the thing blows up on him because it overloads. He's like, it works, and then it didn't
but
work.
we don't.
You know?
Yeah, we don't have that one.
Which kind of plays into the card effect. It's both good and bad.
That's true.
Black Widow throws one of those little things on the
Yeah.
back.
It's just
It
like,
explodes. She gets out.
You fool! You know?
Yeah.
All right, let's flip
My
over
hubris.
and actually look at the text for Occult Research.
But no art. Well,
You can kind of see
dimmed
the art in
art.
the background, but you'll see it when the
Yes.
article comes out. It is a great piece. It's Red Skull over his table with all of his candles and his magic books. But this one
card's
was
so cool.
nuts.
yeah, so we talked a lot about this card originally, and we were like, what do we want to happen here? Like, what is something that could be really cool for Red Skull to do with this occult research? And we went through a bunch of different things, and we came to the conclusion, like, what if he just gets 3 actions right now? He can just do extra stuff. I'm like, that's pretty cool. How much power does that cost? 6? 8? 10? More than 10? Do we need a thing for that? Like, how do we do this? So we ended up with 10 is how it worked. And then, of course, like, you can't have Red Skull doing something crazy with an artifact without it, like, messing up other stuff. So, like, it staggers everyone around him when he plays it, right? Like, so, I don't know. I love that idea of, like, the big boom of energy comes out or something, and then there's, like, fog, and then it clears.
And then
the
he's like
Skull's
super Red Skull.
That's exactly
Yeah.
that moment, right?
Yeah.
He fiddles it out. It explodes. Everybody stops on the battlefield. His teammates are knocked down. They look up. The dust clears, and he's standing there wielding some
Yeah, right? Like, he's
unholy power.
something. I don't know. Like, he found the MacGuffin, I guess.
This is another, like, I call this like the Pagani special card because these are the type of effects you love where you spend something up front and then you reap benefits for the rest of the time. Like, because you have to have 10 power, huge resource like build up,
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
you don't get all 3 actions when you play the card because you get staggered. So
Yep.
you probably get your normal 2, and then after that it's time to party.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I always find that very interesting in messing with the tempo of games, right? Like when characters are strong, how strong they are, how do they like, how does the game flow around a character? And this is like Red Skull's pretty great, just normally, right? But like if you get 10 power, you're going to do a lot of things with that 10 power, or maybe you're not going to do a lot of things with that 10 power, and you're going to bank it and sort of pay it forward for later.
Yeah,
And-
you're kind of skipping a turn though a little
Yeah,
bit,
right? Like,
Yeah.
especially if there's other people around him, it can be very devastating to stagger off your people. I mean, it also hurts enemies around him too. But like, you're making this investment, and if you can't get that 10 power worth out of this investment later in the game, it wasn't worth it, right? So it's that really interesting like gambit idea, not gambit the character, gambit the word gambit, of like, can I commit this resource? And if I can, and if I do, can I get the value out of it? And I
Right.
really like that in a lot of different ways for a lot of different things. And that
See
is
now, like Captain America getting knocked down,
Mm-hmm.
the smoke clears, and Steve goes, "No," and Red Skull's holding power, and he just looks at it and goes, "Yes, Captain, yes."
that's it.
This
Yes,
is like
Hal
that's the moment.
Rogers.
it's perfect. So I really like this card. I know Rowan worked very hard with the playtesters on this card, and I think it came out.
It was like a yo-yo card. It was 8, then it was 10, then it was 9, then it was 7, then it was 10. Then
Yeah.
Red Skull,
And then there was
his
some
power
stagger.
generation would change. Then there was stagger. There was this stagger. There's
Yeah, and
it
he's
went
got that
everywhere.
ability to do himself damage to gain 2 power, right? So like you can get that 10 power by like turn 2 or 3 if you're really getting in there, beating people up with your blood strike. So like, you could play this on turn 2.
Yeah,
That's
and
possible.
and that kind of became the balancing point, was the turn 2 plays and how much that affected the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Because you also have to remember that he technically, once he plays this card, gets 5 actions.
Yeah,
Because he's
kinda,
got
right.
the Hydra agents as well. He's got
Yes,
Hydra
true.
troopers as well.
True.
So he's a very powerful package at threat 5 if you're willing to put those investments into him and you're willing to put that kind of work into him.
And
The rest of the team kind of gets left behind once that becomes your focus, but it can be worth it.
yeah, absolutely. And then you can also just be like, he plays the card, and then you just punch him a bunch and daze him, and he's
Yeah.
like, well,
Right.
Yep. It does nothing
Right,
for
like-
survivability.
yeah. So like it's that really
Turn
interesting
2
thing.
play for a turn 4 payoff. Turn 3 is dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. So like, can you damage him before he gets that kind of thing? If he is damaged a bunch, like, does he already have a bunch of power? Can he play the card? Like, does he just get dazed after he plays the card? It's this whole like really cool mini game going on with the cold research that I adore.
So that kind of rounds out Hydra. Let's go ahead and take a look at the shield side of things, starting with Nick Fury Sr. and the Howling Commandos. So I'm really excited to talk about these guys for a lot of different reasons. So obviously we have some fantastic art that was art directed by one Josh.
Yeah, this was an interesting design. So I'll talk about it now. So a lot of the themes for these classic heroes and villains, we draw a lot of inspiration from the classic what is it, Uncle Sam sort of posters.
Yeah.
That poster,
Yeah.
that's what we looked at for the colors and the tones and stuff. The recruitment posters. So so we had the same artist, Dominic Glover. I would apply that approach to everything he did, and this one was interesting because we at that point we'd only done a couple of the grunts, but this was the first time we did like a full character that was 3 people.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was a little interesting twist to figure out how to get it all in the card. That's usually the biggest problem I always have, is how to figure out how to get it all in the card.
Oh, yeah.
No, the
You
card
know,
doesn't
you
get
want-
bigger.
a little box.
Because you want so much.
I want so much. and I ain't
So
get it.
much. Like, you got a grenade being thrown just
I
way
know.
far away from all the other characters.
I
Look
know.
at Dum Dum
Nuts.
Dugan's steely gaze.
Yeah, he's,
Oh, yeah.
he's so I had to
He's a handsome man.
He is like looking right into my heart.
Yeah.
Even when we started work on Crisis Protocol, like way back in the before times, we had always discussed the idea that there were characters that were just, they made more sense as a group.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
You know, and how does that work? Are they 3 different characters on different bases? Like, is there 3 35 mil base characters, but they all activated at the same time? And that felt really weird and disjointed. And then we started talking about, you know, we have discussions about miniatures and the art form that it is, and
Yep.
making those tableaus and those group shots and how exciting that would be to do stuff. And so it was really fun to finally be able to do that with Nick Fury Sr. and the Howling Commandos, because, you know, I think there's a case to be made that you could make each of these like 2 threats. Maybe Nick Fury Sr. could be a 3 threat, you know, at this point in kind of like his storyline and his iteration. But by putting them all together, we made
Yeah.
something that felt very unique, very different, and also very true to the comics. Because in those classic runs, he doesn't, you know, Nick Fury Sr. doesn't run off alone. He's always with his squad. It's about Dum Dum and Gabe,
Yeah.
you know, and all of the other members of that unit working together to
Right.
overcome the obstacles in their way.
Yeah, sort of like the character isn't an individual; it's the Howling Commandos, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool, and this is a lot of This is opening a door, I think.
Yeah.
that we can
There's so many characters that
walk
fit
through.
that. Like, it's not just two individuals. It's two
It's the team.
people that is one.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and so from a sculpting perspective, if we want to bring up the sculpt, the idea is really cool, but then you got to make them fit on the base. And
don't
make it
have
look
a
good.
sculpt?
We don't have the sculpt. You can go
Uh-oh.
look at the video with the sculpt. Tony's shaking his head.
Gail Gamon sculpted this. I literally, I think I turned this over. There was no terrain element. It was just like like a little bit of rubble under the foots and stuff like that to kind of tie them together. And he just sent back literally in like 2 days,
Which is fast.
which is
for those
really
of you keeping
fast,
track
by
out
the
there.
way. That's ridiculous. And there was this like giant, like just scenic like element and custom base. I was just like, I'm sold. It's
Pretty cool.
Whatever.
Yeah.
No notes.
No notes.
No notes.
No notes.
Yeah.
Lot.
So we took inspiration from a lot of that classic run. Obviously, we wanted to show that they had raided some Hydra tech, so we gave them the more fanciful like weaponry, and they are called prototype weapons on the card to kind of represent that. They were fun. They were just a fun group to kind of like come together and get to do, and they really served as a foundation, like Pagani mentioned, for everything that's going to come forward with more of these characters because they're very, very cool.
I don't know what camera to look at, but I'm shaking my head. a
Yeah,
lot.
we're all in.
Just look at Shake.
It's look at me.
This
He's
is-
definitely not the camera.
Definitely not the camera. It's very creepy.
Just start throwing winks.
Yeah. So one of the things, just to set expectations, this is not the Nick Fury Sr. that leads Shield.
No.
I mean, this predates the Shield formation and stuff. There will probably be another Nick Fury Sr. that comes out in the future. I know a lot of people have like speculated about this since the video came out. Set expectations
When
now.
we do that, you will know it.
You
It'll
will
be
know.
very distinct.
You will know.
He will have a look.
That said, these characters do go into Shield, and they bring some really cool tech and options to it. They have a tactic card, Infiltration, which is nutso, and we're going to use that on the gameplay stream.
Oh,
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yep. So if you want to see the Howling Commandos, you want to see Red Skull, and a couple of the other Hydra characters that we talked about, those are all going to be on the game stream. That is going to preview tomorrow. Josh is going to be taking on the role of world domination, and I'll be trying to stop him with Nick Fury Sr. and the Howling Commandos, and a brand new Captain America, known as Steve Rogers Captain
Steve
America.
That's my name.
All right,
There it
this was
goes.
like your favorite piece of art ever, so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this was the sort of template for, again, that recruitment poster style. Like, this is the recruitment poster style Captain America. Like, in the Marvel universe, I'm sure, like, this is like, you just put this in a poster and you have people joining up for, like, S.H.I.E.L.D., like, all day, every day.
Shield needs you.
He needs you. Look how handsome and amazing he is. And he's also, I think this was the first time we got to do the chainmail, the classic chainmail
chainmail.
armor, which I've been dying to do forever. You know, it's my favorite Cap look. This is classic Cap. Let's also look at this. Is literally, you don't get more classic than this. This is
Got the
literally
red shiny boots, the red shiny gloves,
the wings,
no
on the hat.
pouches,
Fish
the wings.
scale.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
just
Uh-huh.
love it. Love this piece so
Well,
much.
and you chose specific colors and elements like you were talking about, but kind of point some of those out. Like, how is this different from like a standard Crisis Protocol color palette?
So there's like, if you go closer, you can still see the line art, but it's more rendered, more painted. It has more of a painterly look than usual. There's a lot more like different edges and forms to like the skin texture and whatever. We usually do a lot of like cell shaded stuff in the stuff that's coming out in the near future. We push that even more, but this is more of like a sort of a classic painterly kind of a Americana look painting, we also don't do a lot with texture, but again, we have to go crazy with the chainmail because I mean, you know, why
You gotta do it.
Why go half baked when you've got
Full on.
go
Do
full
it.
on? Yeah, you know.
And then the chainmail is interesting, and is an interesting point because the original Captain America that comes in the core box specifically didn't have chainmail because at the time we weren't confident that we could make it read super well
Yeah.
through the tooling process.
Yeah.
So that leads us right to the sculpt, which is a great segue.
Dude, that's go.
Look at that.
Yay! I love that so much.
So, like, once again, like, lessons are learned in developing new techniques and styles and working with the production and stuff like that. And yeah, that original Cap, we're just not confident. Like, so you want to like, so that's a very tricky texture to get in hard plastic. Hard plastic has 0 tolerance.
Right.
It just has 0 tolerance. You can make a sphere with 360 texture, but I'm gonna have to cut it into 50 parts.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, tell me about what zero tolerance means.
So the big thing you're worried about is what's called an undercut, and there's more to it than this. This is the
Super basic, yeah.
This is the we got.
Give me the 30 seconds on a panel.
So you have like a shape. Let's say Josh's shape here.
That's the shape of Josh.
And you go like this, and then make a little cup, right? And then you got, this is the plastic, this is the shape. You got 2 big pieces of steel that's going to go like that, and you're going to put the plastic in there.
But this
little guy.
Put your arm that way.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they can
Where's the
see
camera?
underneath.
So you see the cup.
See that little cup? You can't get, that plastic fills in there. Steel doesn't do anything.
Steel doesn't bend.
Steel
Shocking.
doesn't bend. If you were doing resin or metal, those molds have a little bit of flex, a little bit of
Right.
give. Steel doesn't. It would just rip those out.
Right.
So that's an undercut.
Right.
Each one, oh,
Okay.
to heck
Alice
with
is throwing
that.
his microphone now.
So each one of those like little scales can create an undercut. So it's very difficult to figure out. Fortunately, Marco, Evan, and Kevin and all them
They figured it out.
engineers, they've been working and developing, and we got this beautiful fish scale texture.
It's amazing. It really is amazing.
It looks really good.
And you worked really hard on the pose. We tried to figure out like what do you do with Captain America next? You know, we have him like in shield throw and
This has led to like 5 other poses
Yeah,
in
no
the pocket.
kidding. Yeah,
Like,
we have like guy with shield. We have
Guy
on
with
lock.
shield.
We have on lock for a few iterations, so we're good.
guy with shield.
Yeah, we got him.
There's always Captain America he has a very, and like you can make Captain America kind of do whatever you want, but still got to feel like Captain America. It's that avatar, that exemplar, that iconic thing on the tabletop. When you look across it, it's got to feel like Captain America. That's what you try to capture with miniature. And like this is that moment, right? Especially if there's a couple angles on this that is just straight off a cover of a comic book.
Yeah.
one of the things I love about this design in general is a lot of the times when we're doing posing, we try to make it very natural.
Yeah.
So one of the questions you always ask yourself is like, is this comfortable?
Yeah.
Like, can I do this with my
Can-
body?
Right.
That is the worst way to run.
So,
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, will I follow that man to the ends of the earth
Yeah, no
because he's inspiring the hell out of me.
so
Right? Like he's like up but running forward. But
this
like,
is one of those ones
like nuts.
we looked at it. I looked at a cover of a comic book, and I literally pulled it over into Photoshop, and I drew a trace around it, and then I was like, okay, extrapolate. What does that look like from the side? So we extrapolated, looked at it from the side. I'm like, this makes no sense. Like the human body can't do this. Like because comics are drawn for one angle.
Yep.
It's very pop pop go go, and I'm like, this doesn't work. So we had to actually like figure out how do you interpret that same pose, but in a very more natural way, but not be perfectly natural because it's still a comic book. Like
Yeah.
it's a complex soup. It's got depth and flavor.
But it's delicious.
Let's
Hopefully.
and the pose like absolutely goes right into the flavor of the character on the cards. Let's just jump to the stat card and talk a little bit about this guy. So obviously whenever we do new versions of an existing character, it's really important that the new version brings something different to the table.
Very important.
Different options, different everything. Sometimes that's a long discussion. Sometimes it's easier. I feel like with Steve Rogers' Captain America, like we knew right away what this cap does. He runs into the enemy and punches them. Bam! He knocks them right out. So this is a super aggressive, like frontline Captain America, which I think juxtaposes super well with the original core box cap, who's a lot more focused on leadership. You know, he's got the amazing shield throw, so he kind of turrets up if he needs to. He can handle things in close, but he kind of wants to be midfield. And this cap, I think my favorite playtest feedback ever was he may not like bullies, but he certainly is one.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think you covered it, right? He's got flurry. He's very strong at attacking people. His ranges are a little reversed from previous cap. He's got the range 3 strike. He's got the range 2 spender. He gets places like on your left, right? Like he's very fast, unlike the older cap, which is very kind of sort of methodical in how they play. This cap is much more aggressive. Yeah, he's going to get in there. He's going to beat people up. He's going to take their objectives. He's going to steal their lunch tokens.
He is. He's just
no.
these are mine now.
Yeah.
These are mine now. Yeah, very exciting. Of course, again, not a leader. Some people were kind of assuming that maybe this would be the second Shield leader. Nope, not this time. This is the Captain America who follows orders, right? He is not broken away from. Yeah, he's the soldier.
Yeah, for sure.
He's a captain, not a commander. And that also let us really define Steve Rogers from the original core box Captain America, because now I don't want to say that you're paying for the leadership with Captain America, but honestly, like when you analyze and look at a character card, you want to try to utilize all of the rules potentially. And so if you're not playing original Cap as a leader, you're not using that rule, and that can factor into your analysis of, am I getting my threat 4 value out of this? Without having a leadership that may or may not be used, this Captain America becomes the Captain America that, like, I just want Cap to go in and mess things up.
I want Captain America, and I want to put him under Nick Fury.
But I know I'm not going to use the leadership.
Yeah.
Now you have an option for a Cap that fits a very different role. And so that's kind of another interesting take and things we think about as well with that. Okay, let's go to Josh's very special artwork from this one, because this is the one that he said he would quit if he didn't get to do.
Oh yeah.
I was confronted in my office quite strongly about this. He was just like, he came in and he's like, look, I know we're doing tactic cards for this wave. We're doing this one. And I was like, I don't know, Josh. And he's like, I will quit. I will quit.
Quit. Listen to me.
Right here. Listen to me. This needs to happen. Set it up, Josh.
We love Marvel. We love comics. And I mean, this was an homage to the Golden Age classic stuff, so you can't get more homage to the classic than to go back to the very beginning. So we were doing Jim Hammond, Human Torch, so Tony, throw it up. Marvel Comics #1, cover dated October 1939 by Frank Paul. And
He's got it. He's got it on lock. I know.
And
how do you say no to that?
Last night? Did you practice this last night?
It's the rarest. It's like one of the rarest comic books in existence.
It's true. Yes.
Like it's and so we had to do it, and it's been done a lot of times.
Yep.
Alex Ross and a bunch of other artists have done it, but I think this might be the official first homage in Marvel Crisis Protocol, but it's not the last. We have more coming. But I was really nervous about this one because I know Schick was gonna at least let me try. I mean, he doesn't mind me trying and failing.
You were gonna succeed, Josh. You were gonna succeed.
He doesn't mind me trying and failing because he's a good boss. But I was worried about Marvel. I didn't know if they were gonna let us, homage it, but they did, and they loved this cover. This is by a brand new artist, Patrick Brown. Shout out to Patrick Brown, whose art you'll see a lot of. I mean, this is homage to the legendary Marvel Comics #1. We couple little different touches. We have the gun melting of the heat from Jim Hammond, and I think the costume on the bad guy here is a little different. But otherwise, this is a love letter to comics. It's a love letter to Marvel, and a love letter to the beginning of the Golden Age.
And that color is.
The color is poppy.
That color
so
is popping.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what would be a fight between Shield and Hydra without some set dressing? So let's go to the Dallas Kemp most exciting moment of the day and talk a little bit about some brand new terrain.
Yeah.
Which sets the stage for your Hydra.
Oh, it's so good. Okay, so we needed more terrain. We wanted more terrain.
We need Hydra terrain.
It was just like, okay, so we're doing all this stuff, kind of keeping in theme. What would be cooler than a Hydra tank?
Nothing.
Turns
out nothing.
Literally nothing.
But you can't just have a tank.
We can't just have a tank. I think actually we did 8 different ideas, preliminary, and it got trimmed down to these because these were the coolest. So it's just like, what if we had a Hydra tank? We gotta have a power generator because obviously they're taking over the city. Well, how are they defending it? Oh, they need a turret, a defense turret. This render only shows missile pods for the defense turret. There's actually laser cannons that can be swappable, and even cooler, the tank turret pops off, and both those fit on the tank turret.
Yeah, you can make choices on the tank.
So you don't have to have the traditional normal blaster turret. You can put the missile pod on there. You can put the double cannon laser. You don't have to put Red Skull in there. You can leave the hatch closed. It's Oh my gosh.
There's
Just,
a reason for that red skull, though.
Yeah, you
There
We'll talk
is.
about that in a little bit.
You make a tank.
you make a tank.
Like Dallas shows all this cool
Step
stuff.
one,
We're like, yes,
make a tank.
Make a
this
tank.
is going to be amazing. I can see the view of like 5 tanks in a row, the bunkers, the turrets, the trenches, Captain America, Nick
Red
Fury,
Skull in
like,
his power
running
armor.
forward. Yeah, I'm like, I'm sold. And then I leave for I don't even remember why. I leave for 2 days and I come back and all of a sudden there's a Red Skull in the tank and I'm like, what's this about? And you're like, well, Pagani and I were talking.
Yeah.
And I
So-
go,
So what if the tank
Was
did
it-
stuff?
What if it was an ultimate encounter?
What if it was?
what if it was an ultimate encounter? What if it was an ultimate encounter?
I mean, you'll have to learn when the tank comes out, I guess, unless we're going to talk about it.
terrain set
mean,
ultimate encounter?
I think we can confirm
Yeah.
that the tank is an ultimate encounter.
absolutely
You wanna
is.
walk us through a little bit of how that works?
Yeah, so there's an entire new set of rules for how a tank works in an ultimate encounter. It does not use normal movement rules. It has rules for
Running over people.
moving, which
it's
involves
still
if you're
the
a
same
tank
thing. It's the same thing.
and you move through people, it runs them over. That's how tanks work. It's a very common strategy in tanks. So there's an ultimate encounter of Red Skull driving around a Hydra tank trying to destroy the city. And you, wherever
that
One right there.
Point at
you
Schick. We
have to stop
agreed.
it. Oh, you have to stop it.
I didn't, though. That's the problem. So now it's up to you, because I couldn't stop it.
So there's a whole encounter here based on this terrain kit.
I remember Sarah Rowan working really hard.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
No, she did a great
She did an
job
amazing
developing
job.
and designing the entire Ultimate Encounter. Like, I think Pagani was like, we want this, and do you want to do it? And Sarah was just like, absolutely. And the next thing we knew, we were playtesting the tank, driving it around, running over things,
Crazy.
mad cackles, explosions.
This is the thing, like
characters.
in this story, right? Like everybody coming together, like it all started with just like we're gonna do a tank.
That should be easy enough.
And I do like a little doodle, and then and then I do like a flag. I don't know. There's like a flag objective. I don't know. Nobody liked it. It didn't matter. And then there's this. And then like it was an ultimate counter. And then we got a full like concept made. And then it goes to Evan to sculpt it. And like those missile pods were not on the concept.
No, they weren't. They weren't at all.
Evan just was like, you know, it'd be cool. What if it had a missile pod
pods.
option? And we were just like, well, that'd be cool. He goes, cool. I already sculpted it.
I already made it.
And like, what if it's the ultimate counter? Cool. What if it's a Red Skull? Cool. Like, it's just like, this is one of those like,
It shows how the team really works, right?
Yes.
It's very iterative and building off of each other.
what if this? What if this? What if
Right.
this? There's, you know.
Because you didn't want to be like, okay, make them. Like, oh, we're gonna be late, or you're gonna do extra work. It's like, oh no, they're already done. Like he was so excited to make them
Yeah.
that he just did them.
But like, even if there's a timeline, like, I mean, you know, even if something's due next month, if the idea is good enough, it's
We'll
due
push
the
it.
month after.
It'll slide a little bit. There's a little bit of
There's a
wiggle
little
room.
bit
we
of
can wiggle on that
Well,
one.
a little bit of wiggle room, yeah.
But that's really not. So that kind of wraps up everything for the Hydra Shield wave. That's going to be coming out in the fall.
In the fall, yeah.
But that's not the end of giant robot Doom machines, because there may
What
be
are you talking about?
They-
What are you talking about?
I don't know. I don't
Chick,
know. What
this
is
wasn't
happening?
on the schedule.
Was it not on the schedule?
Are you
It's
being
on-
crazy?